Hello and welcome viewers. You're watching this special presentation of Sansad TV with your host Kriti Mishra. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran, the Chief Economic Advisor and the Principal Author of the Economic Survey. As the government's foremost advisor, he plays a pivotal role in shaping India's economic framework, guiding fiscal strategy and articulating the nation's growth outlook. In this interview, we seek his perspective on the key findings of the Economic Survey, the challenges and opportunities before the Indian economy and the expectations from the forthcoming budget. So, welcome to Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome.
Sir, Economic Survey 2025-26 has set the macroeconomic context for the upcoming budget, particularly with respect to sustaining growth and confidence in corporate India. In your view, what is the single most important takeaway from the Economic Survey for policymakers and citizens alike?
We have been performing very well post-COVID. That's a fact. But the global context has become more difficult and dangerous, unpredictable. That's also a reality. And therefore, we have to not only sustain the actions that have given us high growth post-COVID, we need to also understand how to recraft and reorient ourselves in order to take into account the changed global scenario. And that means becoming an entrepreneurial state and for the private sector to focus on quality, R&D, and innovation. And therefore, no permanent protection, but protection can be given on a limited basis for specific goals and commitments in return by the industry. And Swadeshi does matter in this world because we have to indigenize. The world may stop supply at any given point in time. So these are all the various important highlights and messages of the Economic Survey. Back to you.
Well, that's right, sir. And the survey also proposes disciplined Swadeshi for strategic resilience, a calibrated three-tiered strategy that builds critical capabilities, reduces input costs, strengthens advanced manufacturing, and progresses from self-reliance to strategic indispensability. Help us understand that, sir.
Oh, well, basically, we said national strength comes through, first of all, making sure that we create a good ecosystem for indigenization, that is Swadeshi. And once we do that, so that we are not held hostage by the outside world, then that we have become strategically resilient. So, Swadeshi or intelligent import substitution is the first step to making ourselves independent and making ourselves resilient. Then from there, we move on to becoming more important to the world, and we should reach a point where the world will depend on us. So the first step is to prepare the ground. Second step is to make sure that the world cannot hold us hostage. And the third step is to become very important to the world that the world cannot do without us. These are the three stages through which we should take our productive capabilities, especially in a geopolitically difficult and unpredictable world. And this is exactly the main topic of the capstone chapter number 16 in the Economic Survey.
Well, that's perfectly put. Also, the fact that survey outlines both global headwinds and domestic strengths. How resilient is the Indian economy in the current global economic environment, sir? Because we live in extremely uncertain times.
Sure. I think in general, we have demonstrated very high resilience in the last few years in particular. As the world went through the Russian-Ukraine war beginning in 2022, chip supply disruptions, oil prices went high for 4 months or 5 months, etc. So we have lived through all those phases. Now we have been living with tariff for the last several months from the United States, and we have been trying to deal with it by diversifying our geographical market access in different parts of the world. So we have been very resilient, but this resilience is something that needs to be renewed every day because the world is becoming more and more complicated and unpredictable. Therefore, we cannot take the past resilience for granted. We have to keep at it on a daily basis.
The Economic Survey also emphasizes on capital expenditure as a growth driver. How does India further catalyze private sector investment, especially in long gestation sectors like infrastructure and manufacturing?
Well, I mean, the public sector has been supporting infrastructure investments. Effective capital expenditure has gone up to 3.8% of GDP. And the private sector has been investing, not necessarily in a continuously, steadily increasing fashion, but in fits and starts. But I understand from bottom-up data that 24-25 was a very good year for private sector investments. 25-26 is still work in progress. And even for 24-25, we will get macro level data in February. So in general, I think the very fact that we have been keeping up with supply side investments in infrastructure, mainly led by the government and also partly by state governments, is the reason why we have felt very comfortable in increasing our potential growth estimate. So this is something that we have to keep at it because we are still a low middle income country. And as our incomes rise, infrastructure needs will keep rising as well. And related to infrastructure is the chapter on urbanization, because urban infrastructure needs to be reimagined if our cities have to become both attractive and affordable. Thank you. Back to you.
So there's something that the CA needs to say to the corporate world?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, first thing is protection only in return for performance, such as exports and productivity. Protection never in perpetuity. And also, nation building in developed world has happened in the past, not only because of public policies, but also because the private sector acted in national interests well beyond the self-interest. These are the key, and also invest in quality, R&D, innovation. As the Honorable Prime Minister said in August 2025 Independence Day address, the private sector in India has to believe in and execute dam kam dam zyada. That is the only way to become export competitive. So these are the messages that the survey carries for the private sector.
Oh, fantastic. Dam kam, dam zyada. That is going to be the biggest takeaway, sir. But also talking about the survey, it recognizes green growth as integral to India's economic strategy. In your view, what budgetary tools or incentives can accelerate corporate adoption of sustainable practices and energy transition?
Well, I mean, it's a complex question because it is not just only about public policy; it's also about energy demand management. So, for example, the kind of improvements we are seeing in the electricity distribution companies and their profitability across the country is an important step in energy transition. The survey tries to show you that energy transition is going to be itself hugely energy intensive, and therefore adaptation is very important to India. Because grid scale renewable energy is still unproven and untested. We need lots of investment in battery storage. We need to become resilient and domestically capable in battery chemicals. Otherwise, in the last 1 month or so, we have learned that one of the Indian private sector companies had to end its negotiation with China on getting battery technology. So, in other words, climate change and energy transition are also part of the Swadeshi strategic resilience framework that we have outlined for manufacturing.
You talked about Swadeshi, sir. What is your message today for the budding entrepreneurs, particularly in deep tech areas and, of course, the startups?
For deep tech entrepreneurs, the important thing is to have aspirations, to scale, and also to keep quality and innovation at the core of their business philosophy.
Sir, what lessons does the survey draw from states that have successfully leveraged competitive federalism to boost manufacturing, infrastructure, and employment?
I think the state governments have done very well in enthusiastically embracing deregulation efforts, and some of the reforms we have seen in improvements in women labor force participation, and also in relaxing building bylaws and encouraging self-certification or third-party certification, etc., are all methods to boost manufacturing, particularly in small and medium enterprise sector. Where states can do more is with respect to services sectors, particularly education, where many of the rules and regulations still are focused on inputs rather than outcomes. And of course, we also have written about the fiscal situation that is evolving in various states, and that also needs to be brought under control so that the country as a whole can enjoy lower interest rates and continue to be able to invest and grow.
Sir, you've just said that India is an oasis as far as macro stability is concerned in turbulent times. Big takeaways from this economic survey and the upcoming budget for you, sir?
No, I mean, with just 3 days to go, I don't want to speculate on what the budget holds. I'm also looking forward to it, as all of us are. And I think the budget has, in general, over the last several years, the Honorable Finance Minister has emphasized continuity, fiscal stability and prudence, and delivering on them, and thereby contributing to India's sovereign credit rating upgrades in the course of 2025, and that should continue. And of course, there are multiple areas in terms of process reforms, emphasis on manufacturing, etc. So I'm as keenly awaiting as you are about the budget. And the message from the economic survey, as we discussed earlier, is that I think for India to achieve its development aspirations, the state, the private sector, and households, each one of them have to play their part. And as I mentioned in the preface and in my presentation in the afternoon, we all need to embrace delayed gratification. And that is what will take us to Viksit Bharat by 2047. Thank you.
Well, on that positive note, thank you so much, Dr. Nageswaran, for sharing your analysis. The economic survey and the budget together will now define the next phase of India's economic journey. Well, viewers, that's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Goodbye for now from my side.